Hello and welcome back to Art's Bookshelf Odyssey. My name is Art. Today I'm doing the Cozy Coffee Mug book tag. This tag was created by Jen at Literary Love 123, and it was inspired by some of her favorite things. I have seen several booktubers do this challenge. One recent one that I enjoyed was Suey's Book Banter. She did the tag, and then there was another channel that did it as well, and I can't remember which one that was. And if I do, I'll tag them as well. But I wanted to do this because I really enjoyed the prompts and hearing people's responses. And also, I love coffee and I love collecting coffee mugs. Today, I'm drinking out of one I picked up from our local zoo. It has an elephant on it. Got some good black coffee going today. When I record this, I don't know when I'll actually have this out, but I'm recording it during Victober. So I've also been drinking out of my Victober mug. I've got a Charles Dickens mug that has all the characters from his books on it. And then one I got for Christmas last year has, I think it's from a group called the Ideal Bookshelf, and it has a bunch of books listed around the coffee mug. So those are some of my favorite mugs. That's not one of the prompts. That's just, for your information. For all you super fans out there who want to know what I'm drinking out of. I am also very excited to be heading into the fall season. Here in Iowa, the heat has been hanging around longer than I think it should. But today we have kind of a chilly, cold October day going. Cool. So let's go ahead and get started on this book tag. Prompt number 1, Hex the Patriarchy. Share your favorite women authors. So men, has it come as a surprise to you that women can write books too? Well, they can. In fact, they've been doing it just as long as men have. Okay, sorry about that, but I have quite a few women authors that I really enjoy and I am very happy to promote on my channel. One who really needs no promotion from me is Louise Penny. And you can see her books I've got over here. My books aren't really that organized right now, so sorry about that. But she writes the Inspector Gamache series or the Three Pines series. It's set in Canada. She's a Canadian writer. Mystery series that is just fanatical. A mystery series that is just phenomenal. Really enjoyed her writing. I have several favorite cozy mystery writers like Darci HannahLiz Ireland, and a couple others that I've just come across recently. But then if we want to look at classics, some of my favorite classic writers, female author, Victorian writers, would have to be hands down Elizabeth Gaskell. I've really enjoyed George Eliot and Mary Elizabeth Braddon. So I'm throwing out a lot of names at you, but if I had to pick, science fiction, if you like science fiction, I highly recommend Connie Willis, as well as Mary Robinette Kowal. She writes the Lady Astronaut series, and that's a fantastic read there. It tells the story of an alternate universe to ours, alternate history. What happens if an asteroid hit the Earth in the 1950s, I think it was, in the first book, called The Calculating Stars. And then how does that change the rate or the fate of the space race, and how they were so desperate for astronauts to help humanity get off Earth that they even included women in the astronaut group, and then it develops from there. Very, very good series of books. So let's see, was I supposed to pick just one? No, it says share your favorite women authors. So there's quite a few. And then for, if I can go back, sorry, this isn't more organized, but Elizabeth Gaskell, I have just one more book of hers I need to finish reading, which I'm going to do next year. Probably I'm going to do that in April, I think. And so if you'd like to do a read along with me as I finish my last Gaskell novel, it'll be Wives and Daughters. 90% sure I'll start that in April. So let me know if you are, and I'll try to remember to reach out to you this next year. A couple years ago, I'm trying to make it a point to start reading more women authors, because as I was looking at my end of year stats, I realized I skewed predominantly male, like 75%, something like that. It was pretty high. And I thought, man, I'm missing a whole section of, half the writers out there. So the following year, I tried to make it a point to read more women writers than men. And that's where I came across so many of these wonderful writers. So there's that. And then if you want to know more and find more excellent female writers, I would draw your attention to my podcast. It's the Bookshelf Odyssey podcast. And I didn't purposefully set out to interview so many female writers, but they are the ones that have reached out to me the most. So it's just kind of worked out that way by accident. But I do talk to a lot of women writers. And as I said, I don't do that on purpose, but I really try to find somebody to talk to that has a different point of view than I have, or a different, a different life than I have, a different point of view, a different worldview, a different experience. And I've really enjoyed the conversations I've had over there on the podcast with those writers. And I love hearing their writing journey, how the challenges they struggle through. Some of it are similar, others are different. Just everyone's journey is different. But I find inspiration from hearing their stories and how they came to create their stories. So if you want to hear more about women authors, I would recommend my podcast. Sorry for the shameless self-plug, but it's one of my favorites. I love doing it. So so there you go. That's prompt number 1. Prompt number 2. Never underestimate a woman who reads Stephen King books. Share your favorite fictional women characters. And I don't know directly why Stephen King is referenced there, but that's an author that I haven't read a lot of. I've just actually started working through his books. And one of my favorite women characters is, in fact, one that King created, and that is Holly. She shows up in his mystery trilogy of Bill Hodges, and then she gets some of her own stories, including the novel Holly, which was an excellent read. She's such a fascinating character who comes across mysteries of both human and supernatural, and she's able to deal with both universes with courage and bravery, even though at times she's very frightened. And to me, that's what makes a person heroic, when they do what is right, even when they're scared. And then another favorite female character is Claire Ferguson, and she's a priest who is in the Claire Ferguson mystery series. It's written by Julia Spencer-Fleming, and this is the first book in the Midwinter. It takes place at Christmas time, and she is a former ex-army chopper pilot, and she's now an Episcopal priest at Miller's Kill in New York. And there she meets a police detective, the chief of police, named Russ Van Dyne, I believe. And there's a romance that sparks between them, along with a series of mysteries. These are not cozy mysteries, but if you want another excellent female writer, Julia Spencer-Fleming is excellent. And this is one of my favorite mysteries, in fact, that first book. And I loved the development of characters and just how the slow burn, will they, won't they kind of chemistry between the two main characters is one of my favorites that I've read. So I'd recommend that series. Prompt number 3, Edgar Allan Poe. Share your favorite Gothic book or story. Perhaps the classic one is Jane Eyre. It's really a boring answer, I suppose, but I have a great appreciation for Jane Eyre. I enjoy reading her character journey as well. Another, I guess we could go back to prompt 2. I think another favorite woman character. One of the things I don't like about the story is Rochester, and the way he treats Jane through that. And for those of you who know the twist and the ending and everything, I'm not going to be the one to spoil a 200-year-old book here, but that's one of the things about the ending that I don't really care for, although I've had some readers try to help me understand that better and can come to terms with how that ends, and I think that's helpful, but in the end, I always felt like Jane would just be better off on her own. But there's an argument to be made for her, minor spoiler alert, but for her getting the man she wanted. And that someone pointed out that if you viewed Rochester's story as a redemption arc, that then you see how he's changed by the end, and he's a different man than he was. So that was actually very helpful to help me appreciate that book even more, and kind of come to terms with the character of Rochester. That's a good one. But one I think to look outside of the obvious, I would suggest The Gry Woman by Elizabeth Gaskell. And The Gry Woman is more of a novella. And this is a story that deals with a woman in a bad marriage. It comes with a very interesting framing device for the story. It explores the struggle that women would have had if they had ended up married to a bad man. Not a lot of recourse. And the story is essentially, and I'll try to avoid spoilers, but essentially she's in a bad marriage. So she and her lady's maid named Amante, I think, they escape from her husband, and he pursues them, and they have to go into hiding together. It is a thrilling Victorian piece of Gothic fiction that really had me glued to the edge of my seat. And I believe I read the story on my podcast in the podcast's early days. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do on the podcast, and I've read a few stories by Gaskell, so that you can find that on my podcast as well. Well, this might just be a shameless plug from my podcast. Sorry, but yeah, an excellent book. I recommend you pick it up. Prompt number 4: Swiftea. Name your auto-buy authors. My auto-buy authors would be Louise Penny for sure. Although my wife pointed out that she now has 2 books out that we don't have yet. And my wife has read all of Louise Penny's books, but I'm still about 3 or 4 behind her. But she's telling me I need to start buying them so we can get caught up. But Louise Penny definitely is. And then Alan Bradley with the Flavia de Luce series. He's an auto-buy author. And that's, in fact, another woman character I should have mentioned. The Flavia de Luce series, excellent. She's a 13-year-old brilliant chemist who uses her intelligence and chemistry to solve crimes in her local English village. She reminds me a bit of Wednesday Addams, but not quite as dark. But there's certainly a sense of macabre and a dark sense of humor. Yeah, those are some auto-buys for me. If Ray Bradbury and Charles Dickens were still writing, they would be auto-buys for sure. In fact, I just recently got a Ray Bradbury book that was a republication of his very first collection called Dark Carnival, and it hasn't been in reprint since it was first published back in the 40s or 50s, I think. And they've finally reprinted it in an affordable version, and I was so excited to get that. I've been reading through that. It's been great. But yeah, those are some auto-buy authors. Prompt 5: Camp Crystal Lake. Share a book that makes you feel nostalgic. Some books that make me feel nostalgic would be Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. That's one of the first Dickens I ever read, and every time I go back and read it, I just feel like I'm revisiting my childhood, even though I didn't read it as a child, which is weird. But I'm sure most of you are familiar with the general plot of Great Expectations. A couple others I'll share would be Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury, which I know that was one of the points he wanted to write about was nostalgia, and that tells the story of Douglas Spalding growing up in a small Illinois town. And I just recently reread that with Mitzi from Mitzi Reads and Writes, and we had a thoroughly great time reading that. I lived in Washington State as a teenager, but as a boy, I lived in Illinois in a small town that was very reminiscent of Greentown, Illinois, that Bradbury writes about. So I kind of feel like there's a connection there. And as well as Bradbury was born in Waukegan, and so was I. So we have another shared connection. And then another book that makes me feel nostalgic is, again, by Ray Bradbury. It's Something Wicked This Way Comes. And I didn't read this book until I was an adult, and I was a parent of 2 young boys at the time. They're old now. They're teenagers. In fact, actually, they're not teenagers anymore. My youngest son just turned 20, and my older son is 22 almost. So they've grown. But when I read it now, it helps me remember, the fancies and stories I would tell myself and dream about, as a kid. But also there's this father-son relationship in the story that is so powerful that really gives me feelings of nostalgia. So yeah, that's another good one. Prompt 6, Happy Halloween. Share a holiday-themed book that you recommend. Okay, I've got you covered on this one because there's a whole other side of my life where I am a podcaster of a Christmas podcast, and on that podcast, I read Christmas stories and interview authors who write Christmas stories and different people who love Christmas. It's called the Cozy Christmas Podcast. So I have a plethora of holiday book recommendations for you. One is I've mentioned her already, but if I keep recommending her too much, I'm sorry, but Liz Ireland has written a wonderful series set at the North Pole called the Mrs. Claus Mystery Series. The whole series has been good so far. A couple of them take place at Christmas time. One takes place at Halloween. One takes place at Thanksgiving. I think her newest one coming out is taking place on New Year's. April Claus, who's Mrs. Claus, she is introducing all of these new holidays to the North Pole, and the elves don't always quite get what she's trying to teach them. The world building she does is incredible. And then you throw in a murder mystery set at the North Pole, and it's just a perfect holiday story to read. Of course, I've got to mention A Christmas Carol. I mean, can you even call yourself a Christmas fan if you don't like A Christmas Carol? Well, yeah, you can. That's fine. But to me, this is a book that has meant so much to me over my life that I still read it every year. And I think I'm on like my 25th or 30th time reading the book. It's getting to where I have passages just memorized because I've read it so much. I love reading the story of Scrooge and his confronting of who he is and the change that he desires to make. A couple others, A Boy Called Christmas and The Girl Who Saved Christmas, both by Matt Haig, who is an excellent writer, but these Christmas stories are so good. They are at times sad, but they're funny. My family loved them. I read them aloud one year, and mostly to my daughter when she was young. But my boys sat in on the reading quite a few times because they thought it was pretty funny. So excellent books there. And if you want to know more, I should do a whole thing on my channel, on my Christmas channel. But I'll link the Christmas channel in my podcast in the notes so you can find that. And just about every episode, I recommend some holiday themed books for you. Yeah, this video is really becoming just an exploration of self-promotion. Hope you don't mind. Prompt number 7. This mug contains magic. Share a book you enjoy that is outside of your comfort zone or typical genre. Seldom read out of my comfort zone. It's like by now I almost already know what book I'm going to like and which one I'm not, and I try to stray away from those. But that's a hard one. I would say that's in part how I got into Victorian literature. especially as a teenager, I was reading a lot of sci-fi and mysteries. And then I got interested in a Dickens novel and a Christmas Carol and then Great Expectations. And that led to reading books beyond just genre books. And then that led to eventually, as I'm reading more Dickens, thinking, can there be any other writer better than Dickens from the Victorian era? I doubted it, but sure enough, I tried Elizabeth Gaskell and Mary Elizabeth Braddon, George Eliot, Anthony Trollope, others like that. And I don't really care for, modern quote unquote literature that are just about like, I don't know, look at maybe the nominees for like the Booker Prize or something. I don't mind exploring, the human condition, but put it on Mars or make it a murder mystery as well. And that tends to pique my interest more. But then when you look at it, Victorian novels really, in a lot of ways, aren't that different from what's being written today as far as genre. You can, for the most part, like in Dickens or Gaskell or someone you read, bodies aren't falling out of closets and aliens aren't landing in the middle of London or something. You could read H.G. Wells for that if you wanted, but they're just fiction about people's lives. So I don't know what it is about the older books that appeal to me more than modern stories like that, but that would be something out of my comfort zone. But one I would recommend, this is kind of cheating, but it's called the Reading List by Sarah Nisha Adams, and it's a beautiful story about a man whose wife just died, and he's an older man, and he finds a list of books that she had written down and used as a bookmark. So these are books that she has read. And so he decides to go to the library and start reading through this list that she left behind. He makes friends with a young lady who's working at the library, and they begin to read these books together and form a really beautiful relationship of kind of a father-daughter type relationship, but one that's centered around books. And this has been one of my favorite books I've ever read. It's just so beautiful, and probably the hook that keeps my attention is that it is a celebration of books and of reading, but also a beautiful exploration of love, not just romantic love, but friendship love, family love, brotherhood love, that kind of thing. Really excellent book. I was very surprised by it. I didn't expect to love it as much as I do. So that's prompt 7. Prompt number 8 is to tag some bookish friends, and I'm going to cheat and not do this prompt. I think it's already gotten around to a lot of people, and I do want to say though, if you haven't done this and want to do that, consider yourself tagged, and let me know that you want to do that, and I'll keep an eye out for your video because I'd love to hear your answers to this. All right, well, I've rambled on long enough, longer than I expected to. But I really enjoyed this tag, so thank you for creating it. So let's see. So Jen, thank you for creating it, and Sue and others, thank you for doing it and letting it catch my attention. That'll be it for me today. So until next time, happy reading and take care.